So for this case, let's simply focus on specifying the different types of values we got. Let's take this example, general furniture, okay? So in general furniture, what's going to happen? The first value is going to be a string because right over here we got text, pretty much, okay? The next value is going to be also a string because we got different types of text. This is also going to be a string. This one over here can be an option set because we only got maybe a limited amount of finishes. You can also go ahead with option set if, let's say, you are just collaborating with 3 different manufacturers or 3 different brands. So you can also go ahead. And this is going to be a number because this is a price, so we can specify a number over here. So let's go back to ArchiCAD. First one is a string, string, a string. You can also select 3 options altogether. And no, it's not going to apply for this case. Yeah, in this case, it's going to suck a little bit because it has to be one by one. We have to define string value over here, then string value and string value. But for the next one, we can go ahead, create an option set, which is going to be either one of these 3 finishes, white matte. And let's create an option set over here, white matte. Let's create another one, which is going to be in wood. And then let's create the final one, which is going to be light brown, something like that, okay? So yeah, we can have 3 options over here. Then we got a brand, which we also can be an option set, Promobel, Monreve, or Mobile, however you want to call them. I'm just going to go ahead, create a new option set. Go ahead, Promobel, Monreve, and let's go ahead with the Mobile right over here. So we got the brand specified and the price is going to be a number, okay? So yeah, the price right over here is defined. And something also to keep in mind, extremely important, is the default value. What happens if you don't specify the data for an element? So what's going to happen? If, let's say, you don't specify the price, it's going to be marked as 0, which can represent a risk for our cost estimation, for our price estimation. So maybe for a price, just to keep in mind, it's best that we get an error when creating a schedule than ArchiCAD considering the 0 price, and once we get into the construction process, we're a little bit short in our cost or in our price, okay? So just keep that small detail in mind, which is the default value that is going to be assigned when you, in case you don't specify anything over here. So let's say that the main manufacturer is going to be maybe this one over here. Whichever element you don't specify is going to automatically set Promobel. Whichever whichever finish you don't specify is going to be white matte, okay? The link, maybe we can set this to undefined. The ID, well, it's going to be pretty much the same. If it's the same, we might assign a value by default, okay, which is going to be this type of value, okay, or maybe something like that. And the product, we can go ahead and also define this as undefined because the product is going to be different for each type of element, okay? But if you, let's say, you get something which is pretty much the same, let's say, in sanitary, it's much easier. If you notice over here, the brand is pretty much the same. It's going to be urea, okay? That's the brand. So if the value is by default the same for pretty much all the objects you position, you might as well go ahead and, for example, in sanitary furniture, set the brand by default, which is going to be urea, okay? And we don't actually need to do anything else. Everything by default is going to be urea, okay? So pretty much this is how you're going to start defining your values. Keep in mind which is the default value if you don't specify anything, and always be mindful about the type of value you specify over here. So what I'm going to do is I'll take some 5 minutes and I'll make sure that all the values over here are correctly defined. Alright, so it's going to look something like this. General furniture, we already mentioned how. In electrical, the first values are going to be string, 3 of them undefined, and one of them has a default value, which is the brand, the same brand for pretty much all the lights, Technolight. Then we add the application, we can set this as an option set, and if it doesn't, if it's not defined, well, it's going to be suspended, okay? In option set, we can select from these 3 different options. Then we got the power consumption, which is going to be a number, undefined, okay? Lumens, it's going to be an integer, undefined, the color temperature expressed in kelvins. We got the color rendering index, which is, well, it's going to be an integer, but the default value is going to be set at 80, unless we change it. And the lifespan is also a default value at 20,000 hours by default. Otherwise, if we change it, well, we can always do so, okay? For the sanitary properties, we got the product string, integer string. Option set has only 2 different options, classic or modern. For the materials, it's an option set, which is undefined by default. The brand is going to be a default value, urea, for pretty much everything. The price is also undefined, it's a number, and the comments are strings, okay? So pretty much this is how you're going to start creating pretty much all your properties for whichever type of element you want to assign them later on. For now, as always, take a moment, make sure you create your properties for the group you're working on, and practice the value definition except expressions. This is not, we're not interested in expressions for now. And in the next lesson, now we can continue with the final series of steps, which would be the definition of the availability for classifications, and finally but not least, the final registration of the values, and then the documentation with schedules and multiple functions. So let's go ahead and now proceed to define where these properties are going to be available, for which classifications these properties are available. Now you can define this in 2 different ways. You can link the properties to the classifications with this window, or if you jump into Classification Manager, you will find something similar but vice versa. You actually link the classifications to the properties. Now, if I'm completely honest with you, I feel that it's going to be easier to do this from the classifications, okay? You can always do this from properties, but it's easier from classifications, okay? So let's go ahead. Let's select maybe one of each, whichever classification you want to use. Let's say we got general furniture, okay? Right over here, available properties, or if you're in properties and you have available classifications, you can do the same, vice versa. Let's set, you can assign whether this classification will have all the different properties, or choose whether it has none, or the best one, which is custom. You activate edit and you proceed to define which properties will be available for your classification. So for general furniture, let's maybe select the whole group. Maybe we can simply deactivate the most specific ones. So general furniture, because it's not defined, it only will have product, ID, or maybe link, okay? And then, for example, you can select this one, and this one, and this one. You can go ahead, custom, edit, and make available all the properties for these 3 specific classifications. Okay, let's press OK. Then in sanitary furniture, we can do pretty much the same. Custom, edit. Let's jump into the sanitary properties. It's going to have product, ID, maybe link, only the general classification, and the specific ones will have all the different classifications available. So let's say that it's going to have the whole group over here. Okay, so once you have well, for some reason it didn't change the adjustment. Let's see, we can, yeah, we have to press OK, because if we click over here, it's going to cancel everything, the same as over here. But if we press OK, it's going to save the changes. So that's a small issue I didn't notice over here. Well, the idea here, you get it, we simply assign the properties to the classifications. And there it is. With this, we have specified which properties will be available where, okay, for which classification. Okay, I'm just missing the electrical over here. Usually it's general purpose parameters, okay, and there it is. If you open up now Property Manager, you will notice the same will apply for properties. You can select any type of property, let's say application, and it's going to tell you in this window the property to which classifications is going to be linked. In this case, we got the, I don't really remember which was this property, but it's going to be available for this, and this classification for 3 specific products, okay? So as you can see, linking the classifications and properties, it's quite simple. And now for the next lesson, let's press OK. And in the next lesson, now we can proceed and start registering the different types of data on our BIM elements. So once we have successfully created classifications and properties, the next step is we select an element. You can also select multiple elements and the properties are going to be shared. We go to the settings dialog over here and then classification and properties. Right away you will notice that the properties we have created won't be available for these objects. So what we have to do in first place is define which is the classification that we want to assign to this object. As I mentioned earlier, an object can have 2 different classifications. Let's say it's going to be classified maybe in the OmniClass system as an exterior wall, and maybe in the master format is going to have another type of classification. Okay, something like that. So you can have multiple assigned classifications, but for this case, what I'm going to do is I'll take the example we're working on. Let's activate this one, and let's classify the first object. It's going to be the, it's this one, Monreve General Furniture. So let's go into ArchiCAD. Let's click this small arrow over here. Let's jump into Furniture, General Furniture, and this is a classification we want to assign. Now pay attention what's going to happen over here in Properties. Let's choose the classification, and right away you can notice it's going to display a new type of window, General Furniture, where we can start specifying the information for this product. So what we're going to do now, once we have assigned the classification, once the properties now are available, we jump into the specific data we want to register, we want to save into this object. Let's start off with the product, okay? If you notice undefined, what's going to happen? It's not going to allow you to edit this option over here, but you can simply click right over here and switch the type of value you want to use, whether it's going to be undefined, whether it's going to have a value. Now you can edit this, or you can set this once again to undefined, okay? Let's go with set custom value. Let's paste the data we got over here. Then we got ID. Okay, this one is already by default, if I remember well. Yep, then we got the link, which I'm going to proceed and simply copy. Let's paste the link as a custom value. Then we got a finish. If you remember, this one is an option set, so you can select whether it's going to be option 1, 2, or 3. Easy as that. Let's see which is this one. It's going to be light brown, Monreve. Okay, so this one is light brown, and the brand is going to be Monreve, and there it is. And finally, let's go ahead with the price, custom value. Okay, so we can only input numbers over here, and it's going to be 2,500 Mexican pesos for the year 2019. Okay, so let's simply input this value, and now we're pretty much done with the registration of the data for the first object. Okay, it's as simple as that. So once we have finished the registration of the data, it's going to be completely saved within this object. When, let's say that if you create multiple types of objects, let's say you create 3 of these objects, so each object has the set of data. And let's say that later on you create a general schedule which will allow you to get the total price of the objects you have positioned in your model. So if you create maybe 40 of these objects, Archicad later on is going to give you the total cost of this part of the project. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, for the group you're working on, general, sanitary, or electrical, take a moment, make sure you register all the different properties for the group you're working on. I'm going to take 5 minutes, and then we can proceed with the next step. And pretty much done. So the idea here is that the lights, you got all the information required in this format. Then you got the information for the sanitary objects also in the correct format, okay, with the correct classification, and for general objects in the correct format. Okay, so take a moment, make sure you register your data set correctly. And now this is where the fun will begin, because we can create a schedule, we can export this to Excel, we can create special formats where we interchange data with Excel, we can input this as a table in a layout. This is something I'm going to show you in the upcoming lessons. Alright, so this is where things will get interesting, because now we got multiple ways to document this information. But let's start with one of the best ones, which is going to be through a schedule. Okay, so for this case, what we're going to do is, how about we generate a completely new elements schedule. So let's go ahead in the project map, schedules, elements, right click on elements and new schedule. Okay, what we're going to do is, how about we select everything by layer, or we can go ahead with classification, doesn't really makes a lot of difference, but let's go ahead, let's make it a general schedule 1. This is going to be object schedule, something like that. And the filter, this is where it's going to be interesting. We could take all the objects, set them on a layer, but you can also use, for example, one of the criteria, if I remember well, is going to allow you to select by classification. Okay, you can select which classification system, by which classification system you want to select your elements. Let's go ahead with classification example 1. And let's say that Archicad selects everything that is classification. Well, you can say if it has no value, or a branch of, or direct child of. And how about we select just a general category, furniture and equipment. So in this manner, it should take all the objects and it should document everything, okay? But we can, for now, just for this example, how about we create a schedule about the sanitary furniture. We get all this information in a table and we get the total price of all the sanitary equipment. So let's go ahead and let's select that everything is going to be in the sanitary furniture. Okay, let's simply select the group. Okay, so everything that is a branch of and this group. Okay, which information you want to include in the schedule? Let's go ahead with add fields, and we can go ahead and simply hit right over here properties. Whichever property you create now will start appearing right over here in add fields. Okay, so you can simply go ahead, sanitary furniture, and for example you got all the properties you created earlier. You can include the product, the ID, the link, style, material, brand, prices, comments, and all that stuff. Okay, now if you want to get the general cost of your products, don't forget you can always use these icons. If I remember well, everything about schedules is was explained in Constructive Solutions with Archicad, so I'm not going to delve too much into schedules. Let's simply activate the icon of the sum over here, and everything else looks amazing. Okay, let's even add maybe one extra field, which is going to be the quantity. Okay, and quantity is going to be after the product and the ID. Okay, let's press OK. And let's see the result. What I'm going to do is let's open up the object schedule. Don't forget, in your schedules, let's go ahead and first place and activate the cell size. And you can simply go ahead, resize columns and resize rows. So everything fits all together automatically, and we don't waste too much time adjusting everything. You simply click over here, then click adjust to the window, and now you can visualize everything in your schedule. So we got 3 objects. I think for this case, it's going to be much better if we simply activate the record by column. Okay, so everything will display in column format. Okay, let's see if we can resize this once again. Let's see how it behaves. Looking good, looking pretty good for now. And there it is. We got all the information in general. Okay, I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to simply mess around with text style, with background and all that stuff. So this schedule has a little bit more format. And there it is. So we got the schedule, the general schedule of all the information that we registered. And now you can notice it's going to also start summing up. It will create an addition of all the prices for the object, and it's going to give you a total over here. Okay, so the amazing thing over here is that when you, for example, we're working for now with these objects. Let's say that I create multiple copies over here for this WC, and we go back to the schedules. It's going to mark, for some reason, well, it's going to separate everything because I haven't activated the merge items option over here. So with this manner, you can see it's going to add everything up. The data remains the same, but the amount or the cost of the object has gone up. Okay, so that's quite a nice thing to have in ArchiCAD, that all the information remains the same and you can start using this information in multiple ways. Another way on how you can also go ahead and use this information would be to simply, for example, don't forget that you can always create your schedules and import the schedule into a layout. Okay, so this is an amazing thing. Something else that we can also add up to our schedule would be a field that gives us a quick perspective of the object. That would be nice. Maybe a 3D axonometry would be nice over here. So we can add up that object and even maybe change the scale of the object instead of 1 to 100 to something like 1 to 75. It's still looking way too small for me. Let's adjust this to 1 to 50. Let's see if it behaves well. And there it is. Now we got an amazing type of schedule with real information about the object. Okay. Now something else to keep in mind, something amazing, is that you can always, for example, click on each of these fields, these properties right over here. You can you get an option from ArchiCAD. Open this in a browser, or for example, right over here, you can switch this to classic, modern. So it's going to be much easier to also change the data of the objects through a schedule. Because let's say that maybe you want to register the data for multiple objects. Instead of going one by one and switching these one by one, I still think that it's much more practical to work on a schedule. For example, the data that is undefined, it's going to allow you to simply click the schedule, extra comment over here. Okay, we don't need to click 3 extra buttons just to switch this from undefined to a custom value. You simply click right over here and pretty much that's it. And the data is going to be modified. You will get right over here. You can notice it has been modified, extra comment over here. Okay. Now something else that I want to show you, which is an amazing thing. If you noticed, the option set still behaves as an option set in the schedule, which is nice to know. But I want to show you how the true and false value is going to behave. Okay, so let's take a moment. Let's go into Property Manager. Let's jump into the sanitary furniture. Let's create a test value, something like maybe a property which says accessory number 1. Okay, and accessory number 1 will have a true and false value. Okay, so accessory number 1, the value is going to be true or false, and the value by default, let's set it to true. Okay, and let's maybe add another one which is going to be accessory 2. It's going to be the same, true and false value, and this one is going to be set to false by default. Okay, don't forget, whenever you create a new property, you always need to select the properties and adjust the availability for the classification. So don't forget to hit custom, hit edit, and let's make these 2 new properties available in the classification example, furniture, sanitary furniture, and it's going to be available for these 3 classifications. Okay, so yeah, it's looking good for now. Let's press OK. Let's go back to the schedule over here. It's not going to be included by default. So what we have to do is jump into scheme settings and also make sure we modify this and add the missing fields. Once again, we jump into the properties over here and simply add the properties we have created. Okay, so we got accessory 1. Let's move this up a little bit, accessory 2, and now let's press OK. So if you notice, this is amazing because, as I already mentioned earlier, it's not going to display true or false. It's going to display a square, and the square will have some X. If it's false, it's going to have nothing. Okay, so you can also, for example, select the field. You can activate or deactivate this, modify this extremely easily, much easier than doing so from the classification and properties tab for each object. So the interaction with properties in the schedule, I firmly believe that it's much easier to register the data from a schedule rather than the objects directly. It's possible you do so in 3D, but for future references, you already saw how much time it takes to register each data. For future references, from now on, you will generate a schedule and make sure you register the information directly in the schedule. So with this, we have commented multiple ways on how you can use the schedule. You can always export this, something we're going to comment in the next lesson. And you can also include these schedules in your documentation, which is an amazing option with ArchiCAD. So having said this, take a moment, check out how the information interacts in a schedule. And in the next lesson, we're going to comment the exportation to Excel. So in the previous course, Constructive Solutions with ArchiCAD, we commented an amazing ability of ArchiCAD, which will allow you to export this into Excel. Let's give it a shot really quick so we can recapitulate a little bit about this function. You make sure you open up your schedule. In this present window, you simply hit File, Save As, and you can directly save this in Excel format. It's going to allow you to save this in PDF file. You can export this in doc, in a Excel workbook, and TXT. Okay, let's proceed with Excel workbook, the most basic one. Just going to save this by default. Save. Okay, and I'll take a minute to open this file. Now, since I don't have Excel installed in my computer, I'm going to do this through Google Sheets. It's pretty much the same, no worries, but you can notice it's going to export everything exactly the same. And the images over here, well, which has been reduced back to its original scale, it still looks a little bit small for me, but whatever. It's going to export this as a bitmap image, okay? So yeah, you can notice everything looks completely the same. Accessory 1, this is checked, checked, and the information right over here is checked. So one amazing thing with ArchiCAD, all the data you register for your BIM model, you can always export this into Excel. But there is even a much better function which will open up more opportunities regarding the workflow we have with ArchiCAD. For now, we said, yes, you can export this from ArchiCAD to Excel. I'm just going to mark this as a green bubble, okay, with an E over here. But as for now, this is going to only be a unidirectional workflow. But what if I told you that it's possible to create a bidirectional workflow? You export data from ArchiCAD to Excel. The person who receives the Excel file modifies the file and then returns the modified file into ArchiCAD, and ArchiCAD will automatically update the data right over here and will automatically register the data back into the objects. So that sounds completely amazing, and let's give it a shot. So in first place, let's see which data we can modify. Let's say that, okay, somebody else will make sure to register, let's say, the price for each object, okay? Because it has been outdated, it's been like 3 years, and now we have to update this price, okay? What we're going to do is, once again, open up the schedule. Make sure you're in your schedule. Let's go into File. And in Interoperability, if I remember well, Classifications and Properties, you got these two amazing options: export property values from schedule and import property values into elements. This creates a bidirectional information exchange or bidirectional workflow. Okay, let's give it a shot. Let's first off export the values. Let's save this as, I'm going to keep the original name. Let's Control V over here the name, and right over here you select which schedule you want to export. Let's save this. So it's going to save the values in a specific format. Now I'm going to proceed to open up this file. Alright, and when you open up the new Excel format, you will notice right away it's completely changed. It won't have any type of format. It will be only information. Now, this is extremely important. Make sure you never modify anything regarding the format about this table. Not even, for example, the color, because there's some risk that the function, when importing back the information, there's some risk, and it's possible that it won't import everything back correctly. So yeah, let's see if we can modify these values. Let's maybe add a 20% increase, something like that. I'm just going to create new values over here. Let's add something like this. Let's set this to maybe 3,500 and maybe this one to 2,900, something like this, okay? So I'm going to modify the price, and let's see if we can modify maybe the ID, because the ID for some reason has changed. Now they don't use that reference number. Now it's a different reference number, 2025 plus this value. And this is 2025. I'm just going to invent some values over here, and 2025, something like this. So these fields have changed and the price has changed. Okay, so what we're going to do, once the person responsible of changing the data in Excel has been finished registering the new data, what you're going to tell this person is to simply overwrite exactly the same file that has been opened. So for this case, I'm simply going to download this once again. Let's see if I can download this as Excel. There it is, okay? So you got exactly the same name, it got exactly the same format. The only thing that has changed has been the values, okay? So let's go into ArchiCAD. Make sure you once again open up this schedule over here. Let's go to File, Interoperability, Classifications and Properties, and let's use Import Property Values into Elements. Let's select the modified file that we got over here. Let's open this up. Okay, so ArchiCAD will automatically detect which values have been updated. You can always filter out which information you want to import, which information you want to ignore. Let's say you want to ignore this field or anything else. So for now, usually I just leave it as it is, and I simply go ahead and hit the import function. It's going to tell you, okay, the property values were successfully imported. Press OK, and there it is. You can clearly see this has been updated, and for some weird reason it didn't. Yeah, you know the reason why it didn't update these values correctly. It's a small detail, but it's there. I made a small mistake and I used a small hyphen over here. If you remember, this field will only accept integer values, so that's the reason why it didn't import everything correctly, just by small detail. But yeah, if I try to use this symbol, it's not going to allow you. It only accepts numbers, okay? But sure, whatever, let's just leave it as it is. But the most important thing is that now you've noticed we got the possibility of a bidirectional interaction with Excel. This opens up the opportunity that you as a BIM manager manage all the information, somebody else makes sure to update the information in Excel in its own workflow, and then gives back the information to you, so you simply update this into the BIM model, okay? And of course, if we update this information here, it's also going to update everything inside, well, it's been sunny day, if I remember, there it is. It's going to also update this for each object, okay? So with this, now we could say we have covered the main topics about classifications and properties. There are more ways on how you can manage classifications and properties, but these are the main important points. As always, take as much time as you require, practice these concepts as many times as you want. Remember that we still need to comment expressions, okay? This is something we're going to comment for the next section. But for now, with this, we can put an end to this section, and let's continue with the last conclusions. So far, we have covered the fundamentals of working with metadata and properties in ArchiCAD. As you have seen, structuring non-graphical information within BIM elements is quite straightforward. It just requires careful attention. Best of all, you can interact with that information through schedules in a practical and intuitive way. Even better, the ability to exchange data between ArchiCAD and Excel opens up a world of new possibilities. In the next module, we'll continue with this topic by exploring how to take your properties even further using expression-based programming. We'll wrap it up with a more advanced example focused on accurate quantity takeoffs in ArchiCAD. As always, take a short break before jumping into the next module, and with that said, I'll see you in the next lesson.